Hello everyone, welcome back to a brand new video today, and today it's a very special day. I can't believe I'm about to say this, but today I'm going to be talking about the highly anticipated and my most anticipated movie of the year, Evil Dead Rise. Feels so nice to finally say that. Now this film is directed by Lee Corin, I'm sorry if I said your name wrong, and it stars such people as Lily Sullivan, Alyssa Sutherland, Morgan Davies, Gabriel Echoes, and Nell Fisher. And of course this film is a reboot of the highly successful cult classic Evil Dead franchise, and this film is about a small family that lives in a small apartment building. They're struggling to pay bills and not doing very great in general, but that all becomes worse when they discover the Necronomicon, or the Book of the Dead, in their basement. They then accidentally unleash a demonic spirit that possesses their mother and tries to possess them as well. So the rest of the family must somehow find a way to fend off the evil and survive the night. I might as well give a little disclaimer before I actually start the video. Evil Dead is literally my favorite franchise of all time. I've kind of talked about what's my favorite franchise on this channel. I've said it's Scream before, and I've even said something along the lines of Halloween is among my top 10, and those are still very true. But Evil Dead has been my #1 favorite franchise of all time ever since I saw it back 2 years ago. Because I'm a fairly new fan, but I love these movies. Evil Dead 2 I consider a top 5 movie of all time, maybe even top 3 movie of all time. I adore everything this franchise has done, and even when it's at its lowest points, I still don't think it's bad. Like, I don't think the Evil Dead franchise has had a bad outing. The first one's great, the second one's amazing, the third one is okay. I don't like it just because of the tone, maybe I'll talk about it one day. And the remake is surprisingly really friggin' good. Not to mention the 3 seasons of the Ash vs. Evil Dead TV show, which is a lot of fun as well. So seeing that they're rebooting the franchise for a new audience kind of gave me some hope that maybe we can get another remake sort of deal, or it's actually really surprisingly good. So there was a little bit of expectation there. I did try and tamper them a little bit just because, you know, this is a new movie, so I'm going to take it as it's its own thing. And after walking out of this movie, I can say from an Evil Dead point of view and an Evil Dead fan, I am very happy. Because this film is good. It's really good. But in some ways, and I'm going to get into this, I think it's slightly underwhelming, and I'm going to talk about that. But let's just start out with some of the pros then, shall we? Let's just get this out of the way first off. If you've seen an Evil Dead movie, you know the tone that they go for. It goes for a very dark, goofy sort of feel sometimes, and this movie is very much that. It's a lot more tense than the other films. I'd actually say this is probably along the lines of the Evil Dead remake, where it's mostly just serious, mixed with a little bit of that Evil Dead 2, which it does have that little bit of a goofy side to it, because that's what the Evil Dead franchise is known for. It's meant to be campy a little bit, it's meant to be goofy at parts, and that's kind of the whole charm and what makes it so unique, or one of the things that makes it unique, and I'm happy to say that it is in this movie. It is very much the tone that they go for. But along with that tone, you also just get some really great moments with all that. They can be a little goofy sometimes, but they're sometimes callbacks to the original Evil Dead films, which is really nice to see as a huge fan of it, and they just take certain ideas that happened in the other films, and they sort of morph them in different ways that make them feel unique, and they make them feel like a little bit of a reference, and I love it when they do that well, and I think this movie did it really well. There are definitely a lot of really great sequences, and that doesn't even mean they have to be references. Like, I gotta say, the peephole scene was literally my favorite sequence in the movie. The way that's shot, and how simple it is, but how effective it is, it's fantastic. Some of the stuff you see behind that peephole, nightmare fuel. It's awesome. And I actually think this film has a lot of tension compared to the other Evil Dead movies. I'd actually say this is probably the more scarier out of the Evil Dead, where they actually try and go for a more traditional horror movie, but I don't say that in a bad way. It's still very unique, but they do have little moments of horror like that in tension, and it was really good, and it got me standing up. It got me quite on the edge of my seat. I was kind of on edge for like the middle to end of this movie is so good with that, and you're just constantly gripping onto the edge of your seat because you're like, oh my god, what are you doing? It's so good. It's a lot of fun. And obviously the gore and practical is great in this movie. There are some really really bloody moments in this movie. I definitely wouldn't say this is the bloodiest of the franchise, and I'm going to get into that a little bit later, but the gore was really good, and the practical work, especially closer to the end of the film, was fantastic. Another thing I friggin' adored was the cinematography in this movie. They very much try to replicate Sam Raimi's style at certain points in this movie, and I thought it was all really well done. It kind of was Sam Raimi, but it had a little bit of its own spin to it. There were a lot of really good shots in this movie. They're just so visually pleasing, and they're just, it's so good. It's like I'm watching a Sam Raimi movie all over again. It's like I'm watching Evil Dead 2 all over again, and I loved it. I also want to compliment some of the acting in this movie. Nell Fisher was the youngest of this cast, and I actually think she was the best kid actor in the movie. She was actually doing a really great job with her performance, and I was shocked because kid actors, like we know, can be very hit or miss, and I'm going to talk about that again later. But I thought she was actually really good in this movie. But holy Christ, can we talk about Alyssa Sutherland? This isn't a spoiler to say, it's in the trailers, it's on the poster. You know, she becomes possessed at some point in this movie, and you can tell she is having a frickin' blast. She is fantastic in that part when she becomes a Deadite and she starts like acting like all twisted and manic and evil. It was so much fun to watch, and it was terrifying as well. It was genuinely the most terrifying thing I have seen pretty much all year. It was fantastic. She had such a vibe to her, such a crazy, demonic, just insane, just like mentally she was not there, and that's what I wanted to see, and she was fantastic, and her performance as well was just amazing. When I was talking about that peephole scene, she carries that scene. That's why that scene is so good, and she's scary too in that scene, and I keep saying this, but I can't stress this enough. I love her so much in this movie. She was fan-fucking-tastic. I would even say, and go as far to say, that she is literally one of my favorite characters in the Evil Dead franchise in general. Alongside Ash Williams, Mia from the remake, Pablo from the show, she's up there. Like, she's awesome. I loved her so much. What I also really liked about this movie is how they subtly changed the script and little, like, key points about the movie, and it came off feeling very original and fresh. Like, as an example, in the original films, it's a group of friends that go to this cabin and get possessed. In this movie, it's a family, so you get a little bit of that family dynamic and that how a family would work, and you get kind of that sadness that comes with it. And it was actually very unique compared to the other films, and I actually quite liked how they subtly did it, but it didn't feel like distracting, you know, it didn't feel like they were like, you need to do this because we need to be different. No, it just felt different in general. And I actually didn't mind it. I thought it was pretty good. But with all that said, I still need to get to some of the negatives of this movie, in my opinion. You know, I know a lot of people are loving this movie, and yeah, I get it. This movie's great. But I had some key issues with this movie that I'm going to get into right now. And this one's going to suck because I can't really describe this negative to you guys. There was something in this movie that was irking me the wrong way. And it just made the experience feel a little off. Like, I don't know what it was, because I thought I was going crazy. I thought I was being possessed at one point. I kind of just was like, this is great and awesome, but there's something off here. I don't actually understand what it is, because I didn't understand. And I actually asked, because I went with some buddies, and I asked them, did that feel a little bit off? Like, was there something missing in that movie? And all of them said, yeah, there was something missing. And this is coming from a whole bunch of Evil Dead fans that literally rewatched them all the day prior. So I was trying to figure out what was slightly off, and I still, for the life of me, can't. I can't figure out what was wrong. Like, I honestly can't. I don't know. I wish I could describe it to you guys and my viewers, but genuinely, I think if you go to this movie and you've watched the Evil Dead movies, you might understand what I mean if you didn't love the movie, which I like the movie a lot, but I don't know. There was just something there that I was just like, I don't like that, and it's weird. I also felt like this movie was holding back a lot of the times. I said in the pro section that there is a lot of really good sequences, there's a lot of gore, and yeah, that is true. But I feel like the payoff for certain scenes in this movie are really underwhelming. Like, considering what it came from, you know? Like, Evil Dead Remake did not hold back. It was crazy, and it was super violent. And this movie, it tries to go for that, and there are sequences where you can definitely see that they want it to be like that in certain sequences. But they don't go all the way. Like, there are certain things where I'm like, well, you should have went all the way there because it would have been more in line with the franchise, and it would have been more exciting. And it's just weird because they try and set it up in certain sequences like it's gonna end in the big grand way that you think it is, but then they pull back and they just don't do it. And it seems very weird. I didn't really understand why they did. Maybe it's because this was meant to go to streaming at first and they took it to theaters, which I don't know if that would have any implication to how they actually make the movie. Maybe it does, I don't know. But it was very weird to me how they just kind of pulled back at a lot of scenes. Like one scene in the trailer, and a lot of scenes people can talk about, is a cheese grater scene, and it's brutal. I just want to say, it is brutal, like it's crazy, but it wasn't that bad. Like, I've seen worse when you kind of get over the initial, hit. And I also thought this film was weirdly paced. Like, the first 20 minutes in the movie, I dare say is boring. I was trying to get invested in these characters, but they weren't the greatest in the world. Like, they do give you key backstory moments to like their characters, and yes, I liked the sister's relationship with the mother. I thought that was nice, but most of the other stuff just wasn't that engaging to me, and it made the first 20 minutes feel like kind of like it was dragging on, and there were kind of key moments in the movie that was kind of like, that's a tad convenient. Like, that just kind of happened, and okay, that's how we're doing it. But I'm not gonna complain too much about that part of the movie, but I just felt like the first 20 minutes were very slow, and then as soon as they get the Necronomicon, the film does speed up. But then there are key moments in the movie where something will happen, and it will end very abruptly, and then it'll go to the next scene. And this happens a couple times, and it's kind of like, well, why wouldn't you just show the rest of that scene, sort of thing? That feels very weird why you would just cut away from that and just go straight into another scene. And I didn't like that. I felt like the editing was kind of choppy when it came to little moments like that, and it did take me out of the movie a little bit. And this is where I get really nitpicky. I hate this because these are mostly kid actors or teenage actors, but I need to talk about them a little bit. I'm sorry if I'm calling them out. I'm not meaning to be a giant asshole. But Morgan Davies and Gabriel Echoes had moments of really strange acting in this movie. And what I mean by that is I felt like a lot of their performances, they were underacting. Or certain things would happen that's like life-changing shit, and they just wouldn't react to it. Like, at all. They were like really, they were wooden. And I want to say Gabriel especially. I don't know what was going on there. I don't think that the actor actually put in that great of a performance. And I hate to say that because I know they're young, but I can still give them some criticism because they are good at some points in this movie. I'm not going to say they're just bad. No, that's not the case. No one's bad in this movie. Her performance was very wooden at times. It kind of took me out of the movie. And I don't understand, like, there were certain sequences. I think this is the best way to describe it. There's one sequence where a character, I'm not going to say which one, just because I don't want to spoil it too much, but they're basically bleeding out of their eyes, bleeding out of their mouth, and bleeding out of their nose. And it's just like this black crap. And it seems like this is the type of energy that I got off from that scene. Oh. Well, that sucks. It's annoying. Like, it's like they don't care at all. It's like they don't care about the situation that's going on, and those moments especially took me out of the movie, because as a film goer, you're watching them go through all this crazy shit, and then they just kind of walk away, or they're just like, oh, well, that sucks. And it's like, shouldn't you be reacting more? Like, this would change someone's life, or make someone panic a little bit, and they just don't show any emotion in some of those sequences. It's like, what's going on here? Like, you're bleeding everywhere, man. Like, what's going on? You're not reacting to this at all as appropriately as you should. And those moments took me out of the movie. And I really just, that sucks so badly because this is Evil Dead, but it took me out, honestly. But overall, like I said, I don't hate this movie. I actually really like this movie. I had a lot of fun with it. As a huge fan of the Evil Dead franchise, I really enjoyed it, and I'm happy to say that it was good, and it did carry down that legacy of just being a good movie. All of them are good. So taking that into account and my love of the franchise, I'm going to be giving this film a 7 out of 10. It's fun, it's brutal, it's bloody. There are a lot of really good performances in this movie, but there are some not great performances. There are little problems with the script here and there in terms of pacing and just kind of key moments in general that people don't sell as well as they could have, and I wish those would have been remedied, because if those parts would have been remedied, this movie would easily be like a 9 out of 10, but for now, it's a 7 out of 10, and I think that's a perfectly fair score to give it. I'm actually genuinely interested to see what you guys think down in the comments, so leave a comment. How did you feel about Evil Dead Rise? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Give me your overall thoughts down below, but I'm going to leave you with that. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.